Sometimes the most profound moments in our lives arrive disguised as ordinary Tuesday afternoons, wrapped in the innocent words of a child who hasn't yet learned that the world can be cruel. For Maria Santos, that moment came when 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez wheeled her small library cart up to her hospital bed and asked a question that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her future. Maria had been staring at the same water stain on the ceiling tile for 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. She knew because she'd been counting everything, really. The number of visitors who came to see other patients but never her. The number of times the nurses forgot to adjust her pillow. The number of dreams she'd buried since the drunk driver had stolen her ability to walk, to dance, to feel anything below her waist. At 32, Maria had been a kindergarten teacher who spent her weekends salsa dancing and her summers volunteering at literacy programs. Now she was just another patient in room 314, insurance running out, family exhausted from months of bedside vigils, and hope becoming as numb as her legs. The first time she'd noticed Emma, the little girl was following her father, Carlos, as he emptied trash cans with methodical precision. Carlos Rodriguez worked the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital, arriving at 10 p.m. when most visitors had gone home and the halls grew quiet except for the soft squeaking of his cleaning cart wheels. Maria often lay awake during those hours, listening to the rhythm of his work and the gentle swoosh of his mop, the quiet clink of supplies being organized, the way he hummed old Spanish songs under his breath. Unlike the day staff who rushed to their duties, Carlos took his time. Maria watched through her partially open door as he carefully wiped down every surface, straightened magazines and waiting areas, and always took a moment to water the small potted plants that families had left behind when hope had run out. Emma usually sat in the hallway doing homework while her father worked. Sometimes Maria could hear her practicing spelling words aloud or see her small fingers counting math problems. The girl had an old backpack with a broken zipper held together by safety pins, and she wore the same 3 outfits in rotation, clothes that were clean but clearly hand-me-downs, lovingly mended. Carlos never spoke much to anyone, keeping his head down and his voice slow when he did interact with the medical staff. But Maria noticed how his face transformed when Emma ran up to show him a good grade, how he saved half his dinner break sandwich for her even though she'd already eaten at the neighbor's house, how he draped his work jacket over her shoulders when she fell asleep in the waiting room chairs. One evening in late October, Maria overheard a conversation that changed everything. Emma had been struggling with a reading assignment, and Carlos was trying to help her sound out words, but his English was limited and his exhaustion was showing. "Papi, I can't understand this story," Emma said in Spanish, frustrated tears in her voice. "Mija, you're so smart, smarter than your old man. You'll figure it out," Carlos replied, but Maria could hear the helplessness in his voice, the weight of a father who wanted to give his daughter everything but felt like he was failing her. That's when Maria made a decision that surprised even herself. She called out softly, "Excuse me?" "I couldn't help but overhear. I used to be a teacher. Maybe I could help with the reading?" Carlos appeared in her doorway, his face a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. "Oh, say a tilde plus minus aura. I'm sorry if we disturbed you." "We'll be quieter." "No, please," Maria said quickly. "I'd actually love the company, and I miss helping kids with their homework. Would that be okay?" Emma peeked around her father's legs, curious but shy. Carlos hesitated, clearly torn between pride and his daughter's needs. "It would actually help me too," Maria added truthfully. "I get pretty lonely in here." That night, Emma sat cross-legged on the chair beside Maria's bed, and together they worked through the reading assignment. Maria discovered that Emma was incredibly bright but had been struggling because no one at home could help her with the more advanced English comprehension. As they read together, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in months: a purpose. It became their routine. While Carlos cleaned the hospital floors, Emma would sit with Maria, working on homework, reading stories, and slowly becoming the highlight of Maria's endless days. The little girl had an infectious curiosity about everything: why the heart monitor made those sounds, how the automatic doors knew when someone was coming, whether the hospital cafeteria jello was actually made from horses like her friend had claimed. Maria found herself looking forward to 10 p.m. like she used to anticipate summer vacations. She started asking the day nurse to help her sit up straighter before Emma arrived, and she even requested that someone bring her the small mirror she hadn't looked in since the accident so she could make sure her hair wasn't completely disheveled. Emma, for her part, began bringing small gifts, a dandelion picked from the hospital parking lot, a drawing of Maria with inexplicably purple hair and a smile that took up half her face, a small smooth stone she'd found that she insisted looked like a heart if you held it just right. "Miss Maria," Emma said one evening in November, "do you think people can be friends even if one is big and one is little?" "I think the best friendships don't worry too much about size," Maria replied, smoothing down Emma's dark hair that always seemed to escape from her ponytail. "Good," Emma said seriously, "because you're my best friend." "Well, after Poppy, but he doesn't count because he's family." That night, after Emma and Carlos had gone home, Maria cried for the first time since the accident, not from despair, but from something she couldn't quite name. It felt like gratitude mixed with heartbreak, love tangled up with fear. As winter approached, Maria learned more about the Rodriguez family's struggles. Carlos worked 3 jobs at the hospital: night shift, weekend landscaping work, and early morning cleaning for a small office building. Emma spent most afternoons with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who didn't speak much English but made sure Emma had snacks and a safe place to do homework. Carlos had been saving every penny to move them out of their tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, dreaming of a place where Emma could have her own room and play outside without him worrying. But medical bills from Emma's birth complications years earlier, combined with the rising cost of everything, meant that dream seemed further away each month. Maria, meanwhile, was facing her own harsh realities. Her insurance would soon require her to move to a long-term care facility, and her savings had been depleted by months of medical expenses. The cheerful optimism of her physical therapists was wearing thin as her progress plateaued, and the unspoken truth hung heavy in the room during family visits. Say she might never walk again, never teach again, never dance again. But something was shifting inside her as she spent time with Emma. The little girl's wonder at the world was contagious, her resilience in the face of their family's struggles was humbling, and her unconditional friendship was healing something in Maria that she hadn't even realized was broken. One December evening, snow falling softly outside the hospital windows, Emma arrived with unusual excitement. She'd been selected to participate in her school's winter reading program, an honor that came with a small scholarship for school supplies. "Miss Maria, guess what? Mrs. Peterson says I'm reading at a 5th grade level now. She says I improved more than anyone in our class." Maria felt her heart swell with pride. "Ma, that's incredible. You've worked so hard. I couldn't have done it without you," Emma said seriously. "You make reading fun. You make everything fun." That night, as Emma worked on her latest assignment, she suddenly looked up at Maria with those dark, thoughtful eyes that always seemed too wise for her 7 years. "Miss Maria, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." Emma set down her pencil and took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for something important. "My Poppy is always sad when he thinks I'm not looking, and you're always sad when you think I'm not looking. But when we're all together, everyone seems happy. So here's my question." She paused, and Maria felt her heart skip. "Would you maybe want to come live with us? We don't have much space, but Poppy could build you ramps and stuff, and I could read to you every day, not just when he's working. And maybe you could teach me how to be a teacher too, when I grow up. Because I think I'd like to help kids learn things, just like you helped me." The question hung in the air like snowflakes, beautiful and impossible and life-changing all at once. Maria felt the familiar sting of tears, but this time they were different. This wasn't the crushing weight of loss or the sharp pain of shattered dreams. This was something else entirely. "Ma," she whispered, "that's the most wonderful question anyone has ever asked me." 6 months later, Maria was wheeling herself around the small but renovated apartment that had become home, watching Emma practice her presentation for the 3rd grade science fair. Carlos had used his construction skills to build ramps and modify the bathroom, and what the space lacked in square footage, it made up for in warmth. Maria had returned to teaching in a new way, tutoring students online and working with the local library to develop literacy programs for families like theirs. Her settlement from the accident had allowed them to move to a better neighborhood, and Carlos had been able to reduce his work to just 2 jobs, giving him more time with Emma. But the real transformation wasn't in the living arrangements or financial improvements. It was in the way Emma bounced out of bed each morning, excited to share her dreams from the night before. It was in how Carlos hummed while cooking breakfast, his shoulders no longer carrying the weight of the world alone. It was in how Maria had discovered that purpose didn't require legs, that just required love and the willingness to show up for the people who mattered. On a warm spring evening, as they sat on their small balcony watching Emma draw chalk pictures on the sidewalk below, Carlos turned to Maria with a question of his own. "Do you ever regret it, leaving everything behind for this crazy arrangement?" Maria watched Emma teaching the neighborhood kids how to draw flowers that looked like suns, her laughter floating up to them like music. "You know what I've learned, Carlos? Sometimes what feels like the end of your story is actually just the beginning of a different chapter." Emma didn't just ask if I wanted to live with you. She asked if I wanted to live, period. And for the first time in a long time, my answer was yes. As the sun set over their small corner of the world, Maria realized that Emma had been right about one thing: the best friendships really don't worry about size. They don't worry about differences in age or ability or circumstance. They just worry about showing up, day after day, with open hearts and the radical belief that everyone deserves to belong somewhere. Sometimes the most profound moments in our lives arrive disguised as ordinary questions from extraordinary children who haven't yet learned that miracles are supposed to be rare. Emma Rodriguez had asked one simple question that changed everything: "Would you like to come home with us?" But what she was really asking was much deeper. Would you like to be family? Would you like to matter? Would you like to discover that home isn't a place you go to, but a feeling you create with the people who see you, really see you, and choose to love you anyway? And Maria's answer, written now in the rhythm of their shared days and the laughter echoing through their small apartment, would always be the same: yes, 1,000 times, yes.